You're listening to Speaking Sidemount, the podcast where we talk all things sidemount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and sidemount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top sidemount divers. Whether you're new to sidemount, been sidemount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things sidemount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet. Hey, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount. I'm Steve Davis. This episode is produced with the awesome support of XDEEP and the patrons of Speaking Sidemount. My heartfelt thanks to both for their support that makes this podcast possible. Speaking of XDEEP, like me, I'm sure you saw the recent announcement of the acquisition of KISS rebreathers by a group new to me known as the Dark Water Group. Very cool name, by the way. So the net of it appears to be that the Dark Water Group now own and manage the operation and brands KISS rebreathers, XDEEP, and Seal dry suits. Now on the KISS side, manufacturing remains in the US with Mike Young, Kim, and the existing team all still on board, and I understand that there is some technology crossover from XDEEP for the production of the counterlungs, which makes sense given XDEEP's massive background in materials and manufacturing. There's also work underway on CE approval for KISS rebreathers, with a full launch in Europe planned for mid-2022. Also, I see there's work being done on factory-approved training and new standards being worked up. All in, this is amazing news, and the consolidation, I am sure, will bring huge benefits to each of the product lines and those of us that instruct and dive using them. All I'm missing now to complete the Dark Water set is a Seal dry suit, so I'll have to add that to my Santa list. Let's hope I'm not on the naughty list again this year. I've already reached out to see if we can get an interview on the changes and where this is going, so look out for that coming in the new year. Alright, let's get into it. Now you may remember I interviewed Roger Williams, a Mexico-based cave explorer and instructor, back in episode number 45. Now Roger's a very cool, and I have to say unique guy. He's got an amazing perspective on diving and life for that matter, and he's without doubt one of the very best writers of blog and social media posts with respect to diving. His perspectives are always insightful, thought-provoking, and sometimes just deliberately provocative. So when Roger was effusing about one of his students having turned up for cave training super well prepared, and subsequently she achieved an excellent course standard, I took note. And then this was followed by some typically phenomenal images by Tom St. George of the diver, so I clearly had to know more. My guest, Christine Tamburri, is a young woman hailing from the northeast of America and now living in Durham, North Carolina. She's not been diving long, but as you'll hear, she's developed an exceptional attitude to both her diving and progress as a technical and cave diver. She's interned for Dan Americas, and this became a full-time role, which led to her being involved in some hyperbaric research work being used to develop altitude dive tables. Now, Christine and I get into how she got into diving and sidemount, her training with Roger, how she prepared for her course, and how she came to meet Tom St. George. We then talk about her work with Dan and how sick she became as a test subject for the hyperbaric research project. We then get into Christine's plans for further diving and training and finish with some advice on how to progress your diving. All this and much, much more in this episode of Speaking Sidemount. Christine, welcome to Speaking Sidemount.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Steve.
You are most welcome. Now, look, to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness. So I started diving not all too long ago, about 6 years now. And my journey into diving is a bit strange. So it actually started way back when I was 7 years old. I was in first grade. And I remember we had one of those standardized education textbooks that was full of all of these fictional stories, non-fiction stories, but there was always one that was kind of like a documentary style story. And it was about an underwater hotel, which I thought was just about the coolest thing in the whole world. And I come to find out later, it's in Florida. And that was insignificant to me at the time, but I knew that there was a little bit of a spark of interest with, wow, the underwater thing sounds pretty cool. Fast forward to my freshman year of college. I'm sitting in a geology class, my first semester, my first week even, and up on the board pops a photo of a cave diver. And we were talking about karst geology. And it's like a wave came past and reminded me of this time in first grade, this story that I had heard. And before I was even certified, I went, ooh, cave diving, I want to do that. I didn't know anything. So I had no idea how to get there or what the training entailed, but I knew that that was the thing that I wanted to do. Later on that semester, I broke up with my boyfriend. Usually how all good stories start. I was
Yes.
I was pretty sad and depressed and just going through a little bit of a rough time. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do something for me. I'm gonna sign up for this scuba thing. That again, it sounds cool. I didn't even tell my parents. I just signed up,
Hmm.
and it was 5 Saturdays during the winter. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time. So, it was a perfect winter activity. And I remember the first night of class, I was driving home. It was like an hour drive. And for an hour, I literally just went through every single thing that we did. And I realized really early on, I was like, I'm hooked. This is the
Hmm.
thing that I've wanted to do. And now I realize I was correct. I do want to do this, and it's going to consume my life. I can already tell.
Yeah, and look, if you're training in Pennsylvania in winter, because I've been there in the winter, that's not the tropics, is it?
Oh no, it's really awful and terrible. And,
Hmm.
I've since progressed further south, not south enough, but
Yes.
I don't miss the snow one bit.
Yeah, I bet. And so, what was it about diving that really captured your interest? Obviously, there's the experience of being in the water, but what specifically caught you?
I think it was the challenge. It
Hmm.
was the realization that it wasn't as simple as it kind of seemed, especially when you just see photos of people floating around the reef. They
Hmm.
look like they're doing it effortlessly. And I was really fortunate when I first started. I was just going to dive every now and again. And then it was all weekend, every chance I could get. It didn't matter where it was, whether it be at the local quarry, the lake far away, I would travel. I didn't care. But there were two people that really took me under their wings. Their names
Hmm.
were Sam and Joni. And they really
Hmm.
showed me not so much the skill sets, but really what it means to just love and enjoy the sport and try to get better. So they taught me
Yeah.
navigation, they taught me what buoyancy was. So it was really fortunate to have that mentorship early on. And then when I started to realize what I was enjoying most was getting better, that's when it was, it went more from the recreational stuff to I just really want to be good at just holding still because
Yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the transition there where the fish were cool, but being good was better for me.
So that really resonates with me because my story, I've been diving for over 40 years now, and that's really just a function of how old I am now, right? But when I started, I spent 25 years as a crayfish hunter or a lobster hunter, and that's pretty much all I did. And then just one day I thought, I'm a little bit sick of just looking under rocks, and it's a lot of fun to capture food and that sort of thing. It's a big thing in New Zealand, especially, but I just wanted to get better, and I was trying to find the path to that, and I became a dive master for that reason, thinking that would make me better. And it did. But it wasn't until I tell the story of seeing Steve Bogarts and seeing cave divers and realizing that there was a skill level that was way beyond where I was at that time and thinking, I want that skill level. So for me, it wasn't even caves. It was just, I want to dive like a cave diver. That then takes you into the different environments that that skill set will suit. Was it similar for you?
It absolutely was. So, like when I first got certified, I think I rented gear once, maybe twice.
Hmm.
And I remembered, oh, these cave divers, cave diving, backplate and wing, that sentence, these two words seem to go in the same sentence pretty often. So
Hmm.
that's probably a good idea. So I bought a backplate and wing right from the start. I was the weird girl at the quarry with the different gear. I was okay with it because I think I was so naive at that point that
Yeah.
everything was just happy and joyous and it didn't matter. So when I finally was able to kind of progress out of the recreational realm into the technical stuff a little bit later, I
Hmm.
realized that the foundational skills that I'd built really paid off because everything just got a little bit easier having not built bad habits when I first
Yeah,
started.
yeah,
So,
yeah. It's awesome to start out that way, isn't it? And so you mentioned the backplate and wings. So obviously we're talking back mount there. How did you transition from that into side mount?
oh my gosh. So again, young and naive. Of course,
Hmm.
I get wind of this demo day where they're doing all sorts of stuff, and side mount being one of them. And of course, I looked at photos and went, that is about the coolest thing ever. I have to try
Hmm.
this. Again, not knowing anything. Jump in the water, 2 tanks on my side. This is all cool. And within 5 minutes, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just bought a whole set of gear 2 months ago. I'm going to live in poverty forever because this is really cool. And it was so freeing. And I just loved it right from the start. What I didn't realize was how dang finicky side mount was. Obviously, everyone that does side mount learns later on in life.
Absolutely, yes.
Which is all part of the fun for some people. I'm not a tinkerer, so there's that. But really, doing a couple dives in side mount, I was like, I really want to learn this. And obviously, I was still living in PA, doing mostly quarry and lake dives. So it was all open water stuff. But, I later got into cave diving. So the application part of side mount really sort of presented itself there. But I would say about 94% of my dives are in side mount. So my backplane and wing actually hasn't had a lot of action in the 6 years that I've owned it. So, every now and then I look and think of the good old days and then remember that was a bad idea.
I've got one hanging on actually, it's an XDEEP one, so it's a good one, but I've got one hanging on there that never gets used. And every now and again, I think about taking it to the tropics and then I don't. So yeah, understood. In fact, funny story, as everyone knows, I've been diving the Sidewinder recently and I made a change to my configuration and forgot to put my diluent hose on. So I'm on the boat by the time I realized this, which is really stupid and I've done all of my checks. I've built the unit, but this is on my cylinder and the regulator. And that part I just assumed was there, which was crazy. But anyhow, so I'm on the boat and this is the classic good thing too. So I realized I don't have a diluent hose. So I think, hey, no problem. Strip the Sidewinder off and I'm back in open circuit side mount. So I jump in and do one dive, but I've only got my little 40 cubic feet, 7-liter cylinder. So that's one dive and I'm done. And we were out for 2 dives. So then the guy who runs the dive trip, he's a fantastic dude. And he said, here you go, Steve, you can have my twin set. And I think, oh crap, I haven't dived a twin set before. And I must be the only person on the planet at the level I dive who didn't go through twin set. I went straight to side mount. And so I thought, okay, I think I can do this. And I know how a valve drill works, having worked at a tech dive center. So I thought, okay, I can do this. So I just put it on and got in the water. And you know what? What stunned me was how easy it was. I mean, he had it set up well, of course, but he's a big, big guy and I'm not. But I put it on, jumped in, straight into trim, did the whole dive, direct penetration dive with another guy, and then came out, did a helicopter turn, a couple of things. I thought, oh, wow. And here was I thinking it was going to be this terrible experience. It actually wasn't too bad. So I hate to say that now. But it is quite funny how you have these misconceptions, I guess, about different configurations. And diving is diving. I think once you get a good skill set in one, you should be able to transfer it to others.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so funny that you say that because about 2 years ago, I thought, oh, you know what? I've got to try these doubles, this twin set thing. And I jumped in and I got out and it was February maybe in Pennsylvania. So it was, the water temperature was basically 0 Celsius. It was, a little bit above that, maybe 4 degrees C. And the air temperature was no higher. It was the worst. But I got out and I went, we're going again. We're
awesome.
Absolutely diving again. This is the coolest thing. And then I started whacking my head on the manifold and went, you know what, never mind.
Yeah, it didn't change me to want to dive back mount, that's for sure. But at least I knew I could do it. Absolutely. So you mentioned that you got into side mount, you went to this tri-day, and then did you do side mount training in the Northeast first before going south?
Yeah, so I lived in Pennsylvania until up about 6 months ago. So most of my dives are in the north where it's just dismal and awful. So I did side mount training in New York. And so that was, dry suit, dry gloves, the whole 9 yards. 99% of my dives have been in the warmest possible undergarments that I can own and dry gloves. I don't care the temperature. It doesn't matter to me. I'm a wimp. I did do the training up there. And what I learned really quickly was you take the course, but really the learning happens afterward. And the learning happens from diving with other people. And, like you mentioned, watching videos and going, well, that's a cool way to do that. I want to try to do that. And of course, you try and typically fail immediately afterward. And then you get a mentor that helps you along. And I dove the same sort of basic way for years, tweaks here and there, trying different things, but in general, the same way. And then I went to do my cave training and I'm like, wow, I guess all this is changing now. And but it was a fun process. So, and you switch from steels to aluminums and there's just all sorts of different things. And like I said, I'm not a tinkerer. And the fact that I stuck with it kind of shows anyone can do this seriously.
Yeah, totally. And your cave training, was that the training you did in Mexico with Roger Williams?
Yeah.
As soon as I saw that, I thought, Christine, I've got to talk to her sometime because, Roger was super complimentary on a few things. Firstly, on the preparation that you'd clearly done before you turned up to see him. And he loves that. I know that. But then your performance on the course clearly was really good too. And it must have felt epic to get that feedback from him because I'm pretty sure he's not someone to give that lightly.
So when I finally decided, all right, I thought about this cave thing before I got certified. It's really time to start thinking about this. That was
Hmm.
about 3 years ago. For 3 years, I debated, who in the world am I going to train under?
Yep.
Because I wish I had made some better choices early on in instructors and what have you, but I really wanted to make this one a choice that was educated. So I went through countless people in my head thinking about what was I going to do. And then maybe a year ago, I was working a night job, listening to Speaking Sidemount on repeat all the time, every night. And this guy, this guy pops up, this Roger Williams from Mexico. And I'm like, okay, I don't
Yeah.
know who that is. And about halfway through, he mentioned something about his love and appreciation for being still in the water. And I went,
Hmm.
oh, wait, I need to go back and really actually listen to this because this has really caught my interest. And then he started talking about this little slice of paradise he has in the jungle. And I'm thinking,
Hmm.
oh, okay. And then he started talking about, yeah, my wife cooks for all of our guests. And I'm like, sold, done. Um, it wasn't that simple. Of course, I debated for about 3 months after that, put
Hmm.
him into the mix and really started thinking about it. And the way the cave thing kind of came about finally, after all of these years, after me kind of going, I think I'm finally ready. I've put a lot of dedicated time into this. I think I can go and actually, not just do the bare minimum. I really wanted to make the cave experience something that I went in already exceeding the minimum and learning a bunch more because I came in prepared. And what had happened was, I guess it was maybe December of last year, I got a letter in the mail from my grandmother, greatest woman in the whole world. And she was 93. And she had
Wow.
sent a letter to myself and my other two cousins, so her grandchildren. And it had a check in it. And she said, listen, I'm getting older. You're going to get this money eventually. I want you to spend it while I'm still alive. She was
Oh,
so
that's so
cool.
nice.
So, of course, like my other cousins, they paid off student loans. One remodeled her kitchen. I bought a can light. I don't know whether or not
Yeah.
she thought that was a great feat of ingenuity or just stupidity. So, bought this beautiful can light and went, okay, so we're getting closer. Now I can start thinking about it. And she ended up passing away this past February.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, it was a hard time, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I got to thinking, you know what? She traveled the world when she retired. I know what I'm going to do. So I
Hmm.
emailed Roger out of the blue, little innocent Christine, very formal email, cave, whatever inquiry. And I will never, ever forget. I was at work, same job, about the same time where I originally heard his podcast. And he sent me an email, and the first line of it, I literally wrote it down because I want to bring this up.
Hmm.
It said, hey, so glad you reached out. This is, of course, solely for selfish reasons, though, because I love the idea of having a rock nerd to geek out both at and with.
Wow.
And my background is in geoscience. So I was,
Yes.
sure to mention that in a cave inquiry. So that was the first line. I went, I made the right choice.
Yes.
He was just so personable, and I look up to him so much for
Hmm.
his philosophies and teaching styles. It's unbelievable, and one of the best choices I've probably made to date in this sport by far.
Yeah, he really impressed me. And I mean, the reason I interviewed him in the first place was he's such an interesting guy. He's a New Yorker, which probably helped with you as well, so he's a Northeast guy. But the thing with Roger is he's a very educated, articulate, and his writing is amazing. So I'm sure you follow him on Facebook, but every single time that man writes something, it's worth reading, and it's interesting and it's funny and it's challenging and it's clever. And he's way, way more educated in the arts in particular than I am. I'm an engineer science guy, right? But he's into that too. So he's just such a rounded individual. And here's a man that I've interviewed and spoken to but have never met personally. So I'm so looking forward to the opportunity of doing that sometime, and I definitely will go dive with him. I understand exactly what you're saying about making the decision of who's going to be your instructor, because if I go back through Speaking Sidemount, my God, who would I choose? Yeah, Roger would certainly be in the mix, but there are so many great instructors out there. And I think there's a couple of points about what you said is Roger's so interested in the geology as well. And so having someone who's such a great diver, such a great instructor, so well-rounded in diving, been there a long time, knows the area as well. What a great choice. If anyone's listening, by the way, too, if anyone's listening, that's pretty funny. For those of you who are listening, Christine said something that was really, really important. And Roger made a post on this the other day. He said words to the effect of, I've been really lucky recently. All of my students who've turned up have been super well prepared, super engaged, listened to what they're told, have contributed, worked hard on the course. And he said, sooner or later, this is going to change and I'm going to get someone who's going to be kind of a terrible student. If you're going to go on a cave level course, a technical diving course, please do the preparation work that you need to do. You made mention of the bare minimum and you wanted to exceed that. So by the time you went for training, you were already well prepared. In my opinion, having been there both as an instructor and also as a student, what it means is that you can really enjoy the course because you're not floundering around worrying about, for instance, your buoyancy, or can I be still in the water, or can I back kick? You need to have all that stuff done before you get there, in my opinion, because it means you can so concentrate on the things that you're going to learn that are special to that course. And cave training is about diving in caves, right? So it's about the rules we need to follow, the planning of the dive, the equipment, the execution, and the skill sets. And you so nailed it. I think it's the very reason you did so well on the courses because of the preparation, right?
And it's all about preparing thoughtfully. It's
Yes.
not about just going out and going diving to log time underwater. The worst dive I did leading up to Mexico, and it was a dive in the middle of it. I went, it's going to be worth it. It's all going to be okay. It was 36 Fahrenheit outside and snowing. There was about 3 inches of snow on the ground, and there was a thin layer of ice on the water. It was awful. And I was so paranoid that I was going to show up to my course and not be as prepared as I wanted to be, that I was willing to suffer for 20 minutes in the water. Yes, I can only do 20 minutes in those temperatures. I'm an absolute wimp. But I was willing to do that because I didn't want to get to where I was going and regret it later. And I think the thing that students often overlook is you're investing your time and your money to do these courses. And I would think that one would be pretty passionate about making sure that you got the most out of that time and especially out of that money. And in the long term, really, divers should be looking to always get as best as they possibly can. And I don't think we see it often enough in the industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I've experienced it the same. You've got a Cave Adventurers t-shirt on, and I did my Sidewinder training with Ed Sorensen. Another guy, fantastic, dives very differently to the Mexico Sidemount and cave divers, but what an immense skill set that man has, and a great guy to train with. He's quite different. He's a pretty strong personality, but a very nice guy underneath or alongside that. And I love training with him. You know, he's hard on you, but when you do well, he tells you. And when you get a well done from Ed, you know you did well. He doesn't say it just because you want to hear it. He says it because you achieved a standard. So I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. But boy, I was well prepared beforehand. I'd done a lot of sidemount diving, so it wasn't so much an issue there. But every night after I left training with him, I'd go back to the accommodation. I was there by myself, bit of a lonely existence, but I didn't mind because I was writing notes and step by step, you know, this is what I've got to do. This is what I've got to work on. I'd sit back and visualize, how am I going to do better tomorrow? It was that important to me because, like you said, I not just invested in the training, I traveled across the planet to get to Mariana in Florida. It was, gee, I think I spent the best part of $20,000 by the time I bought a Sidewinder, training and travel. But I loved it, you know, absolutely loved it. But it was a pressured experience, that's for sure.
I think we might actually be the same person. I've just decided that just that second. So I went to Mexico by myself. I had to rent a car. That was a traumatic experience for small, young Christine. This was like 6 months ago. Any past version of myself, I call her mini-me.
You're a bigger person now.
Bigger, yeah, right. But before I went, you know, I emailed Roger. We decided, yep, this is going to work. I went to the store, bought a big notebook, and decided for the next 3 months, all I'm going to do in the evenings is read things related to cave diving, watch videos related to cave diving, do gas planning related to cave diving. I walked into the airport that morning of my flight to Mexico with 84 pages of notes.
Wow.
And I swear to God, I sat down first day with Roger. It's just us in his little palapa. And I pulled out this notebook and instantly went, oh my God, he's going to think I am the biggest nerd on the planet. And I don't regret it because every night I also set aside time to do just what you described. sit down. First of all, just write out what I did that day, because that was a once in a lifetime trip for me. It's going to happen again. But at that time, like, that was the biggest thing that I had done. And then I went through everything that we did. And then, I did quote well in the course, but I made a lot of mistakes, as we all do. And I wrote explicitly what mistake I made and how I'm never going to ever do that ever again. And I wrote all of this down, and I look back at it now and I'm like, thank you, mini me. Thank you, because this is what is going to make me better in the future when I forget those little nuggets of information that I learned that fourth day in Mexico or whatever it may be.
Yeah, you said you're the same as me. You're actually super me. There's no way I would do 84 pages before I got there. But the concept is the same, right? And I reflect at the moment, I mean, everyone knows I'm from New Zealand, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but our rugby team is one of the best in the world, the All Blacks. They're about to play in Washington, D.C. this weekend, in fact, against the USA Eagles. So that's pretty exciting. And I don't know if that'll resonate across America or not. Probably not. But the bottom line is, one of the things the All Blacks do, again, to be better, is they all carry notebooks. And they do exactly what you just mentioned. So they're writing down all of the things they're working on. It's always about, how do I get better? Here's where I am now. Of course, we make mistakes. If you didn't make mistakes, you wouldn't need to go for the training, right? That's why we do it. You're expected to make mistakes. But the bottom line is, you make a mistake, you write down what it was. What am I going to do to improve? How do I get better? And just keep focusing on this continuously. Every day, every dive, I get a little bit better. And sometimes you find yourself making the same mistakes and you've got to go through an iterative correction thing. But the bottom line is, this is the path to improvement. And look, one other thing that I saw, and I think it came out of the same trip, I saw some brilliant pictures of you by Tom St. George. How did you manage that?
This is my favorite story from Mexico. So it's a very small side note. You don't have to include this. One of our medics at Dan today was with Tom doing photos at the same cenote. So
awesome.
This is one of my favorite stories out of all of Mexico. So typically, Raj kind of made up his mind of where we were going to go the morning of. It was, I don't know, we'll just see how I feel in the morning and we'll go there. And I remember the night before, I was like, hey, do you have a plan? I didn't even know why I asked, because I knew the answer was going to be, I don't know, we'll decide in the morning. But that day was different. And he said, yes, I have a plan. And I go, oh, okay. And I just let it go. It doesn't matter. You could say any name of any cenote and I just say, okay, because I know nothing. We roll into the Cenote Julo. It's just south of Tulum. It's one of the last in the chain. Parking lot in the middle of nowhere. Bunch of dogs running around. Pretty typical Mexican cenote, but it really was. Yeah, it was in the middle of nowhere. And we roll in and there's one other truck. And I go, oh my God, someone else is diving this random cenote? Like, you've got to be kidding me. But whatever, didn't think anything of it. Got out of the truck and this guy comes over and he goes, hey, Christine. And I'm going, whoa, stranger danger. Who are you? And how do you know me? Because I don't know you. And he had a British accent. And then he goes, are you excited for today? And I'm like, Roger, like, I am like getting ready to get back in the truck because I don't know what's going on. And Raj walks over and he goes, I was sworn to secrecy because your mother hired Tom to do photos for the day. So for the next 5 minutes, the only answer to any question I had was, wait, what? I could not believe. So my mother, you have to understand, doesn't know anything about diving. She's never dove. She barely even knew why I was going to Mexico. She just knew it was an underwater something and there might have been an overhead maybe. So all of this was just insane. And of course, my first reaction was, Raj, I'm a smaller person. I can hide behind you. You do the modeling. I don't think I want to do this. I don't know how this works. This sounds very intimidating. And of course, he was like, no, your mother paid for it. You've got to be in the photos. And it was a blast. It was the most relaxing choreographed dance that I've ever been a part of. It was such a cool experience. And when they flicked on those big, big lights, I was like, whoa, okay, so this is about the coolest thing ever. So we did that. And Tom is just amazing. Like, what a character and what a guy. He's really awesome. So a couple days later, we get the photos. And at that point, I was like, wow, I'm so glad that I was in these photos.
Oh, they're immense. They're immense. I mean, he's one of the very best. And Tom, if you're listening, you and I are going to chat sometime. He just does some of the best pictures, especially of caves. Immense.
Well, what's funny is the photos they keep randomly popping up. He was on
Yes,
the cover of the Cave Camp magazine. Like, are
I
you
saw
kidding me?
that.
Like, what? Flight real quick. This starts in like a week and I'm not going to be there. I mean, I'm there in spirit,
Yeah,
but like it won some photo thing, like third place, like for Scuba Diving magazine. And I'm like, what is going on? And what's funny is I always look at the photos and go, I did absolutely nothing to do anything for this photo. I floated there. He did
yes.
all of the work. Roger did
Well,
all of the work. I did nothing.
hang on a minute, but you made a statement, I floated there. And what most people don't realize is how difficult it is just to float there, right? To
Yeah.
be still. This is exactly the skill level we're talking about, being balanced and still and interim and looking good, and then being featured in one of the best photographers going in one of their pictures that then goes on and wins awards. That's something, right?
Well, and for those of you that know nothing about modeling, I'm talking like I know something, I did one shoot, but
Yeah.
you don't just get one picture and move on. They want
Mm-hmm.
you to sit there. If you are able to float and not move and just look at stuff, you get so mesmerized at what it is that you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at that other people are like, hey, you need to look somewhere else now. We're trying to get another shot. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
it really was just an interesting experience because we're so used to just moving forward, seeing new things, but being forced to stop and stare at something while other people actually worked. You
Mm-hmm.
had the opportunity to really sit there and take in everything that was right in front of you for 30 seconds or 45 seconds or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave you a
Mm-hmm.
real appreciation for what is in that cave, specifically what's at the very beginning of the cave, because I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people think, oh, the further you go, the more cool stuff you'll see. Well, we were 100 feet
Not
in, and I can
always.
tell
Mm-hmm.
you there was a lot of cool stuff, and it was everywhere, and it was overwhelming at times. So it was the coolest thing ever, and I can't wait to go back and work with him again.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And how did your mum know to contact Tom?
So my mother, she's a character too. She kind of was pushing me, oh,
Mm-hmm.
why don't you get photos while you're down there? I'm like, no, mom, it's okay. Like, I'm already overwhelmed. I'm already here by
Mm-hmm.
myself doing the cave thing, doing the training. It was great. I just want to dive. So yeah, of course, she's an extrovert and reached out to Raj, and he was sworn to
Right.
secrecy, and he gave her a couple names. And my mother with her photographic eye was like, oh, I liked his photos the best. And she did amazing because Tom is really a special individual. He's really great.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And you're right, a great story, and you have a great mom, that's for sure. So you're based in North Carolina, but it sounds like you spend more time diving freshwater than salt. I mean, we've talked a lot about cave diving, but a little bit like me, New Zealand, I'm a long way from caves. I'm assuming you're a fair way away there. Do you find yourself traveling for diving a lot doing that?
I literally can count on two hands how many times I've touched salt water. I had to touch
Right.
salt water last month and I nearly puked. I
Mm-hmm.
had to, I had to rinse my gear afterward.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
rinsing gear is a serious problem for me because I just
Mm-hmm.
don't. So I always forget, when in salt
Yeah.
water. So most of it is quarries and lakes and rivers and what have you. Now
Mm-hmm.
that, like I said, I relocated to North Carolina about 6 months ago. So now that I've cut the 18-hour drive from Pennsylvania to Florida in half, I'm trying to get
Mm-hmm.
to Florida more often. Still freshwater, but it's caves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty great. But yeah, saltwater, we have great wrecks off in North Carolina. I had two
Yes.
charters booked this year. Both got blown out. I went, this is why I don't do this.
You got a bunch of
um,
these too. I'm holding up a megalodon tooth
oh,
here that Sandra
yes.
Klopp very kindly sent to me. So yeah, they
My
must be worth
God.
hunting.
I will tell you what though. So I'm guessing you've never done the Cooper River
No.
or any of that. So I did the Cooper River this summer. It was a trip that I wanted to surprise my boyfriend with because his style of diving is a little bit rougher. He
Mm-hmm.
really loves diving with a task. And I'm thinking, great, we can go hunt for shark teeth. He's going to love this.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, and I can only describe it as the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. You sit on a boat, you throw the biggest single cylinder you can find on your back, whatever you are weighted for with a wetsuit and whatever cylinder you typically dive, add 15 pounds to that, strap that on, throw a helmet with as many lights as you can stick on there on your head, and then you grab either a screwdriver or a rake of some kind, dump all the air from your BC, plop into the water, rocket downward, and before you can see the bottom, you smash into it, and then you roll along the bottom of a river.
Which
And
is
then you
flowing,
turn,
I assume.
oh yeah. Then
Hence,
you flop onto your stomach and you look for triangles for an hour and a half in the
right.
dark. And there are blue crab that try to pinch your fingers off. There are flounder that you don't see, so the ground is moving around you.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, people love it. And I got on the boat the last day. I'm like, you know what? This has been fun. This is really dumb. I don't know why people do this, but I found really cool teeth. And I guess if you get excited about that stuff, it would be the perfect trip. But unfortunately, I didn't really get excited about it.
Contrast that with a cave, and I know where you're coming from.
It was ridiculous. But, you know, the things that people pull out of these rivers are so significant to history that you have to appreciate it. I didn't find any of that stuff. I just found teeth and went, okay. So he wants to go back. So I'm going to send the boyfriend next time by himself and say, adios, I'm going to Florida. And we'll call it good there.
And I saw you were in Mariana recently.
Yeah, last weekend. So my first trip to Mariana was the first time since leaving Mexico. I'd done High Springs, Gainesville area a bunch. But the last time I went to Mariana, so my very first trip, it was the first time since Mexico that I left and felt a very strong pang of sadness. Because, oh my goodness, I love Mariana. Ed has an incredible little setup there.
He does.
Cave diving off a boat, like what? That's so cool. And I really fell in love with Jackson Blue, JB. I cannot wait to keep exploring all the little nooks and crannies. It's just beautiful. It's a 10-hour drive for us, and it's 100% worth it. No questions asked.
Oh, absolutely. Let me think. It's a 13-hour flight to Los Angeles, and then I've got to cross over. But yeah, I loved it so much. Jackson Blue, and I love the entrance even. That entrance is so amazing, where you just have that little nice gear up area where the ladder is, and you swim through the little gut and into the entrance. It's so beautiful. And then into the cave. Yeah, I can visualize, because I've did so many circuits there training with Ed. I can visualize the first couple of minutes of that dive when you go down the gut and carry on. And it's just an amazing, amazing cave. Did you dive hole in the wall?
Yes. Yes.
That one is my favorite. I so enjoyed that cave.
It was my favorite on the first trip by far. And then we dove that on Sunday. We went on Labor Day weekend. Monday, we did. So I don't think I mentioned this when I did my training with Roger. It was through NSS CDS. So I got a waiver to do one navigational decision, which was super great, which led me to be able to do this really cool jump, like a couple hundred feet in at JB. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm going to take it back. This is incredible. So hole in the wall is my number 2, but JB, it stole my heart, really.
Yeah. No, a fantastic area. And just another one to add to the list, because as you say, the High Springs area has got some amazing caves in the Gainesville area. And then, of course, there's all of Mexico and then the Bahamas. And then I've been fortunate to dive caves in Europe as well, mainly Cave del Agua in Spain. So there's the lot in France, which I haven't dived. So there's just so much to do. And for me here, we unfortunately had our trips cancelled this year, but we're supposed to be in Mount Gambier in South Australia, where there's also some brilliant caves. So for anyone who's into cave diving and travel, wow, there are so many brilliant places to go. And I've only scratched the surface. There's caves in Greece or Sardinia. There's another one. There's a lot to do there.
It's so exciting because I'm just starting out and just seeing what's available kind of readily, if I could say, to me, and then looking a little bit further and going, wow, I'm going to have an amazing life of cave diving. I'm so excited. So oh my gosh,
people, like, these are all my interview guests. Just so many of them are brilliant people who are doing great things and are super passionate about cave diving. And you mentioned Cave Camp before. Yeah, that's something that I really want to go to sometime, because any of these events that bring these people together will just be amazing to go to. So can't wait for us to open up a bit more and get back to that, huh?
Oh, it's just such an incredible community, as is every little special kind of sector of diving. I mean, it's not just cave diving. When you get into tech diving, it's the same way. If you find the right group to kind of morph yourself into, of course, you're going to find the groups that kind of honestly just suck. But there are really good people. And if you can surround yourself with them, I learned so much from just settling in with the good people. And
exactly.
basically stealing everything that they do and
Yeah.
morphing them into something of my own and
Oh,
making it
again,
mine.
maybe we are the same, because that's actually something I've said a few times to Audrey Cadell, because I used to follow her around and just watch her and Tom, and both of them, they were kind of my mentors, if you like, early on. I'd learned so much just from watching and observing and seeing how, especially the way her fin technique is just amazing. So just watching how she did that contributed significantly to the way I dive now. So yeah, I 100% agree. Now, you mentioned something earlier that I want to ask you a bit more about. You mentioned that you're a geologist. So tell us a little bit about, because it's different for me, right? I'm an engineer, science guy, but being a geologist in cave diving must be amazing. Tell us a little bit about what you understand of caves and how you meld cave diving with geology.
Oh boy. So, okay. On paper, I have a degree from Penn State that says geoscience. The joke is I went to Penn State and studied geoscience, but I really got a degree in scuba. So,
Well done.
so I was a geoscientist right up until I graduated.
Yes.
So the one thing that I can contribute to this question
Yes.
is my research, my undergrad research was focused on, it's called mirromitic lakes. Essentially, all that is the lake is stratified. The top is normal, everyday lake water. The stuff on the bottom is usually anoxic, so it smells like rotten eggs. It's full of hydrogen sulfide, and in between is some kind of layer. Choose your poison. So there are caves. Cenote Angelita is one of them. You go down, there's a hydrogen sulfide layer. Everything below is disgusting and smells like eggs. So I understand how that works. Then there's Cenote Zapote with the bell formations. Like, those are biology and geology going together and creating these incredible formations. So it might not be so much as to what I understand about the caves, because again, I basically got my degree in scuba. It's what I did. I ran trips for the university. I was the president of the scuba club, blah. But being able to appreciate the time scale that we're swimming through is, I think, something that you need to kind of have your brain trained to think about, because I think a lot of people, when they do cave diving, for example, or they dive in Lake Michigan, or any other lake for that matter, it's really hard to think about the time scales that you're working with, because it's not hundreds of years, it's not thousands of years, it's millions and millions and millions of years. And to think about, Florida was at one time the ocean floor. They find shark teeth in Jackson Blue. It is so difficult for people to wrap their head around it. But for me, it's kind of easy, which makes everything else easier.
Just the fact that these caves were dry at one stage during ice ages, I guess, and then were flooded again, and sometimes multiple times. I know Brian Kaycock talked about the Bahamas. I think some of the caves there were actually dry over 4 different periods. And of course, that's when all the beautiful formations are created. They don't happen when they're flooded, right? A cave that's been flooded forever doesn't have formations as such. It may have other things, but not those. So it's really just immense to understand that. One thing, again, reflecting on some other interviews, Natalie Gibb talked about this a lot, about the understanding the cave and how having a knowledge of geology actually helps you understand how a cave goes, that goes in this direction because of the history of the cave.
Well, and think about, even Brian talks about the African dust in the caves of Abaco. I mean, to wrap your head around that as someone who doesn't have formalized training in some area of geology, geoscience, what have you, you're thinking, oh my gosh, it must be impossible. But really, there's African dust in a lot of places.
In Malta, we would get a thing called blood rain. This happens now. And what happens is there'll be a dust storm in Africa, and the dust will come north, and then it will rain, and we get red rain, which is exactly the same thing, right? So it's still happening to this day, of course.
It's incredible. And like, while I was at Penn State, there was a site that we surveyed out west, and looking at the ground, what is this? We're like, I don't know. And of course they say it's African dust. And when Brian would show videos of him hitting the floor of the cave in this red poof, African dust, it's just so
now,
hard
hang on,
to wrap around.
Let me stop you. Brian doesn't hit the floor of the cave, right?
No, never.
So
never.
Brian deliberately just did that to show what it was,
yes.
Right?
That beautiful image, by the way. It's so impactful to see that really deep color variation in the cave, and to show that this is a cool little piece of geologic history that's captured in time in this cave. It's really interesting.
Brilliant. Yeah, love it. Let's move on a bit. You work for Dan at the moment?
Yeah, I do. So I was the risk mitigation intern this past summer at Dan. So essentially what we do in risk mitigation is try to prevent accidents before they occur. And this is Dan America. There's more than one Dan.
I found that out when I moved from America back to New Zealand, and I found that my membership got really screwed up.
Yep. So I work for Dan America, and we do more than just insurance. Most people think of Dan and they go, oh, you sell dive insurance, or they know us from the medical hotline. But really we have 6 areas. We do membership. So the perks of being a member of Dan are endless. You can look on the website. We run the medical hotline and the medical information line. So that's more of our medical team. We do research, which is super cool. We have first aid training. We do sell insurance, and then we have risk mitigation. And in risk mitigation, we basically try to prevent the accident from occurring so you don't have to use the insurance and you don't have to call the medical hotline. What we also do is kind of a broader reach, not just interact with divers. We interact with dive centers. We also do stuff with hyperbaric chambers. And essentially, the root of what we do is housed in the Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment, or the HIRA program. The HIRA program is a self-assessment for dive operators that looks at almost every aspect of a business that you can think of. So whether that be lighting in your classroom and how that lighting impacts student learning, compressor fill stations and how to prevent accidents there, and more than just cylinder eruptions. We're talking O2 cleaning, things like that, down to even if you're providing vehicular services to customers, what types of insurance do you need? Because it's a commercial operation if they pay you. So that's where we're rooted. I also have a hand in Dan e-learning. So we have a lot of free resources for folks to educate themselves on gas quality assurance, boating safety, things like that. But I started as an intern, which was the coolest program ever. You moved to Durham, North Carolina for the summer. And I always tell this story to kind of wrap up in summary how my summer was. So my 3rd day at Dan, 72 hours into this internship, I'm working with the research department. And we're in the field and we're doing bubble studies. So essentially divers will go out. We cannot dictate their dives, but they will go out, do a dive, come out. And as soon as they hit the surface, a 20-minute clock starts. After 20 minutes, we lay them down on the table and ultrasound their heart. We're looking for bubbles. That is not my area of expertise, but I was an intern, so I could go and help out. In the parking lot, random North Carolina quarry, seriously, in the middle of nowhere. I pull in, get out of my car. This truck pulls in next to me, and I kind of turn. I'm talking to someone, one of the other interns. I turn, look to see who it was because I didn't recognize the vehicle. And I turned back to the person I was talking to and went, "That's Richie Kohler." And of course they looked at me and went, "Who?" And I'm like, oh crap.
Come on.
Random North Carolina quarry. So we're all gathered around. I'm the elephant of the room thinking, did no one else see this? Am I blind? And we're talking about what the day was going to hold. And our research director, Franca Tomans, turns to me and she goes, "Hey, how much gas do you have? Because Richie needs a buddy." And I'm thinking, oh boy, I've been at Dan 3 days. Are you kidding me? This is the coolest thing. So we did the most exciting dive you could ever do. We went to 100 feet to a platform and we sat there for science in the dark, 3 foot of visibility. And I'm sitting there going, I'm diving with Richie Kohler. This is the coolest thing.
It is.
And it was so interesting. And the summer just got better from there. I mean, it started with that. We got to tour the Bauer compressor factory up in Norfolk, Virginia. Their facility is incredible. Actually, this morning, I was in a beta testing course for Gareth Locke, Human Factors. So a bunch of us sat down and agreed to help beta test a new program he's coming out with. So that was this morning, actually.
Brilliant.
It was just so cool, and they paid for us to go to Florida, do a leadership level rescue course. I'm going to get to write an article for Alert Diver from it, like just really cool stuff. And then they liked me enough that they kept me around, which is cool.
Listening to you spiel off, having just been an intern and now just starting to work there, what Dan does, I think it was a pretty good effort, to be honest. And already you've tweaked my interest, because one of the things around diver safety, clearly I've spoken to Gareth Locke on Speaking Sidemount and very aware of the immense work that he's doing on human factors. And in the very last episode, I spoke to Professor Simon Mitchell. I wouldn't say he's an expert in human factors in diving, but he introduced human factors into a surgical environment with just amazing results in terms of using checklists. And it's super interesting what Gareth's doing and the courses that are coming. But the other thing around risk mitigation, one thing here in New Zealand, which is not unique to us, but diving operators here fall under some legislation that is the same as workplace health and safety. So what you would call OSH in America. And they're very, very strict on us. And I think some of the materials that you may have there might be really useful to people here in New Zealand who are running dive operations. I don't know if Asia Pacific have the same content, but I think there'd be people really interested in that. I might get you to drop me some notes afterwards and we'll pick that up and see if we can have a look through what they've got and see how useful it might be here for operators, because we really struggle with some of the requirements. We have to go through audits, and there's a pretty heavy emphasis on that here that is stifling us somewhat and making life very, very difficult for operators. So at the same time, we want to be safe, but an easier way to structure things, I think, would help everyone a lot. So let's pick that up afterwards. All right. So The other thing I saw recently was you did some work in a hyperbaric chamber. And so tell us about that experience.
So the Cooper River was the dumbest thing I've ever done. This was the second dumbest thing. This was a complete byproduct of being associated with Dan, not so much being associated with, but having the opportunity to move here. So Dan is located in Durham, North Carolina. We're in the Research Triangle, so we have Duke University right down the street. Duke has an incredible hyperbaric facility, 7 hyperbaric chambers, and they do a lot of research. And a lot of these studies, they present to the public and say, would you like to be a part of the study? And they pay money, and they pay good money. So of course I was like, okay, I'm interested.
Yes.
And the study that I just got to be a part of was about developing decompression tables for diving at altitude, which seems pretty straightforward. And it was a bit of a wonky road to get there. The protocol was this. It was living at a simulated 15,000 foot altitude. So to put that into perspective, that is 3,000 feet below base camp for Mount Everest.
Yes.
For 48 hours, so 2 days. Then they would take you on a single 10-foot dive in the chamber on 100% O2 for 2 hours, followed by an immediate return to altitude at 15,000 feet for 1 day. The first day at altitude was essentially, what symptoms of acute mountain sickness do you have? So nausea, vomiting, headache. Ask me how I know any of these. The dive was to supersaturate your tissues with oxygen. And then the immediate return was to see, did you get symptoms again? How severe were they and what were they? And based on the chatting that I had with the team there, they had about a 50% chance of getting symptoms versus not getting symptoms. So I didn't really like those odds at all. So we wore O2 saturation monitors on our wrists the entire time. For about 4 hours into the study, I was like, okay, you're feeling all right. Things are going pretty well. You know, they would lock food in and out. We could order from local restaurants, basically Grubhub, but the guys outside would do everything. And I'm kind of looking at my O2 sats, and they're in the 70s, and I'm thinking, okay,
whoa, that's not.
Oh, just you wait, Steve. It gets worse.
I was going to say, because I know from COVID, for instance, if you're down in the 80s, that's not great, right?
Oh, yeah. They're putting you on oxygen. For us, they were like, do you need drugs? But no, so 4 hours, I was feeling all right. Then I got a little bit nauseous, and things really started going downhill from there. So for the first 48 hours, essentially, really severe migraines. I slept a total of maybe 3 hours both nights. O2 sats that were dipping down into the 60s at that point, not eating, just generally feeling so crappy. So we are living in this chamber. There are four people in total. So it's myself and 3 others in this confined space that probably started to smell pretty bad, but it was all right. It was pretty terrible, but we got through, because when we went on the dive, symptoms immediately resolved.
Yes.
Instantly felt better. The 2 hours flew by. And as soon as we got back to altitude, we had hoods on. They shoved food in our face and said, listen, you need to eat this right now while you are still feeling okay. So we did. And I'm thinking, okay, now 9 o'clock at night. We did the dive at noon. It's been 9 hours. I feel okay. Then I went to bed, and then I woke up at 2:30. And at 2:30, I have never felt worse in my whole entire life. I never will ever underestimate a headache ever again. It really was brutal. So for me, the symptoms came back and they came back in full swing. And it's just really cool to be a part of a study like that, because you know that it's going to go on to impact the dive community in some way. You know, you're one of 120 people that have done this altitude study, but it means something, and they paid pretty well. And it was such a cool experience to live in the chamber. I mean, I work with chambers baby chambers. I know just enough to kind of maybe get by in a conversation. But at Dan, I'm going to start learning a lot more about chambers. So to be there and live there, it was great. And I would be the first to sign up for another study to live in the chamber in saturation, not at altitude. We're done.
Yes.
That was a once in a lifetime thing, and we're done now.
Yeah. So you're going the other way next time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, at saturation, count me in. It was just such a unique thing to rely solely on people on the outside world for food and medication, and honestly just an ear whenever you needed it, because it was not a pleasant 74 hours.
Yeah, look, I've had a brush with the experience you talked about. I was in Switzerland and I went to the highest railroad in the world, went to the top, and at the top there, I think we're only at 12,000 feet there, so quite a bit lower than you were, but you are tired and sleepy, and you feel you lack energy. It's just a classic hypoxic type experience. And then we actually chose, after we come back on the train, it's still relatively high, so we chose to walk down. And it was a few kilometers of walking, but just down a road. And every step we went down, we felt better. And until all of a sudden, you almost felt a little bit supercharged, right? Because you've gone from this sleepy, nauseous experience down to getting more oxygen clearly. It was quite staggering. And I remember that to this day. And I wasn't doing so much diving way back then. But I can only imagine what you went through.
There was one person that got medically pulled. His O2 saturation was 35% at one point.
Wow.
And it was like, we're all looking going, is he going to be okay? But when he got back to sea level, as did we all, instantly felt better. It was unbelievable. The body is just so cool to be able to literally survive something like that. And not only survive and feel so bad for so long, but to, at the drop of a dime, feel better. It was a wild ride, to say the least.
Actually, some of the guys here I know, working with Simon Mitchell, they were doing some research here as well with hypoxia and a few other things. And I think one of the things they were looking at was the onset of hypoxia and whether a rebreather diver would actually notice the fact that they were hypoxic. And the truth is you don't notice, which is really scary because the only thing you know is you passed out. That was an interesting experience for the guys involved. And I volunteered for that, but unfortunately was rejected, would you believe?
Oh, no.
It was so sad. And even sadder, it was on age. They had a cutoff. I'm not even going to say what age. I was heartbroken, right? Because I really wanted to go and have a play and be part of it. But maybe in another lifetime, I'll leave it to someone else. Really interesting research, all of that they're doing, isn't it?
I encourage anyone, if you're available and able, to get involved in some research. I mean, some of it is incredibly uncomfortable coming from personal experience here.
Yes.
But it's just such a unique opportunity that I don't think anyone should pass it up. It really was. It was madness. It was just such a cool experience overall. Looking back, awesome. Of course, in the moment, it was not cool.
Yeah, and you've quite rightly defined what you're prepared to do going forward and what you're not prepared to do as well.
No, I won't be climbing any mountain anytime soon, to say the least.
No. Everest is off the to-do list, right?
That was never on the bucket list. The temperature alone, we can axe that right away.
All right. So talking of bucket list, so what is on the bucket list? What's next for Christine?
Oh my gosh. So I want to dive Abaco. I want to go down and I want to dive with Brian. I want to dive Abaco so badly. But really short term, I want to finish full cave. Absolutely 100%. So I did apprentice with Raj. I want to go back and finish full with Raj. I've been down to Florida, I think 5 or 6 times this summer already. It's an obsession at this point. But one thing that I'm really older, wiser Christine from 6 years ago, Christine, what I'm really passionate about right now is the idea of zero to hero training. And I think others can learn from mistakes that I have made. And if that can be a thing, it's worthwhile at that point. So when I first started, it was young and excited and everything was at my fingertips and I could do whatever I wanted. And so tech training came pretty early. Sidemount came really early. DM came pretty early. And it was great. And I had a blast. And when I finished my course with Raj, I had a very different feeling than I had ever had on any course ever before. It was a feeling of extreme sadness. I was so sad when that course ended because I realized I was never going to have the opportunity to be new at that ever again.
Right.
And it's kind of a double-edged sword because that's great because now you have the skill set that you can go out and explore. But I was just so sad for like hours that night. And I remember thinking, I've got to get out of this. We've got to dive tomorrow. So now I'm just really passionate about waiting and enjoying the journey and enjoying the process, because I will be the first to admit, yeah, I did training way too quick when I first started, and I didn't get as much out of those courses as I could have and arguably should have. And it's really sad to think about because really you never have the opportunity to be new at it again. So when I talk to people who are just getting started, who are just so excited and they're course, I want to go do all the dives. And I'm like, yes, do all the dives. But if you can find a way to convince yourself that not going from course to course is an okay thing, I promise you, you will feel so much better about it in the long run. Because I think
absolutely, they're very wise words there. Something I could add to that though. So I think absolutely. So having a decent amount of time, especially at cave levels or tech diving levels, I think is absolutely the right thing to do. And I think it comes back to what you said before too about preparation. Being adequately prepared for the next level means giving yourself the time to build on your skill sets, to build on your experience, and to practice the right way. And I think one thing that you've done, again, in training with Roger, is that you now have a really sound base for everything that's coming in front of you. And one thing I will say about the sadness thing is, so when you go to full cave, you're not beginning again, but you're about to make a jump to a whole new level, right? Especially around navigation and gas planning and so on. And so there's so much to learn in that next level and achieve there that you're almost at the beginning again, but of the next level. You know what I mean?
It's exciting.
It is. And then there'll be another level. I mean, whether you want to go on to rebreather training and cave rebreather, or whether you want to go on to stage cave, or whether you want to take a DPV into a cave. And that's one of the things I love about it, whether you want to go a bit deeper. For me, especially at my tender age now, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to go to 100 meters or anything, but I definitely want to be able to dive in the 60 to 80 meter range. And so for me, like on the Sidewinder now, yeah, I'm so excited 100 hours in or so into the Sidewinder now of going to normoxic trimix on it and then taking it into caves and deeper shipwrecks and those sort of things. And so there's always something in front of you. And as you say, you just have to moderate your enthusiasm sometimes to make sure that you build the sound base. I never want to turn up on a course not prepared for it because I don't want to let myself down. Maybe it's an ego thing there. And I don't want to let the instructor down either. I want them to teach me what they can teach me. And I don't want them teaching me something that I already should have known.
Yeah, I will be the first one to stand up and admit mistakes. And it was like, when I look back at my tech training, my initial like advanced nitrox deco course, I met the minimum. I did the skills. Did I do the skills well? Well, I thought I did at the time. And now looking back, it really is a point of anger for me. And I try so hard to remember how I felt. And I vowed to never, ever repeat that. So I want to do full cave when the time is right. And if I could get to Mexico tomorrow, I could get through a full cave course, but the time's not right. And that's okay because I'm having an absolute blast doing what I'm doing now. And it actually makes me sad when folks will go straight from intro, straight to full, couple days here and there, and they're done. And I'm like, you're done. That is so sad. I'm so sorry, because you could have gotten so much more if you just would have gotten a little bit of experience in between.
You're safer too. There's just no question that at the intro level, apprentice level, whatever organization or agency you're with, just spending a bit of time learning what a cave is and learning what it is to do the gas planning and be part of a team and follow the line, but learn the cave at the same time. There's so much there in just that level before you do a jump or hit a tee. And then because it is a serious sport, let's call it, and if you make a mistake, it's very unforgiving. And I'd be the first to admit that I've missed tees, which I've thought, why did I do that? How did that happen? And those sort of things can really get you into a lot of trouble, doing blind jumps, all the things that can go wrong, turning around and not knowing where you are. So you really do need to put the work in to make sure that you've built some experience and that you've built your mindset. Steve Bogart's talked about this too, building the confidence and moving your comfort zone forward in just little incremental steps. And he had a saying, the caves aren't going anywhere. So I love what you said there. And again, if anyone's listening who's in a similar stage, or no matter what stage you're at, I think you can apply that to your diving as you progress.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to fit into the other full cave divers. It's okay because
Mm.
everyone started in the same place at one time. And if you can just remember that what you're doing, not a lot of people get to do,
Yeah.
period. The
Yeah.
fact that you're getting to go 1,000 feet into the cave and then you look at the arrow and have to turn around, you're doing more than 99.9% of the population already. And that is
Yeah.
an accomplishment. And it's
Yeah.
just so cool. And there's so much to see. So
Yeah,
really,
there
there's
is.
no
There is.
rush. And that's an important thing to remember, I think.
Awesome. Well, look, I'm kind of done in terms of my questions. You can tell clearly we could talk for hours. And I'm so excited to see what you're doing at Dan there as well, and to see the passion that you've brought into what is going to become your career, I can tell, and the passion that you've brought to your diving. And then, look, with that sort of attitude, good things come to you as well. The likes of the feedback from Roger, and from what I can see from afar, you thoroughly deserve that. And congratulations on what
Thank
you're
you.
doing.
It was such a cool experience. I'm so
Mm-hmm.
grateful to have had the opportunity to go and
Mm-hmm.
learn from someone who I just look up to
Yeah.
so much. I mean, what he does is incredible. And I will say, when I was leaving Mexico, I told him the last day, about to get in the car, I said, I'm going to go far and wide and spread the news, spread the message. And he goes, the what? And I go, I got to spread the news about how diving is fundamentally the dumbest thing that you could potentially do in your life. And if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't read, I'm sure you have, Steve, but if anyone listening has not read the blog post, We All Float Down Here, you
Mm-hmm.
have to go and read it because it will really give you a new perspective on why we dive and why we take
Mm-hmm.
ourselves so seriously. And I wrote this one down too because I knew this would come up. I have a very small excerpt that I'm going to read because I think it's a really important point. And Roger says, we put on a bunch of questionable, brightly colored life support equipment that we bought from a person wearing cargo shorts and sandals or off of eBay. Then we let some societal misfit guide us into a hostile, dangerous environment just to float around like a potato and look at stuff as we go. Neat. And when you think about it, it's really all we do. It's what I did for Tom. It's what I did in Mexico, minus the skills that I had to do for the actual course. But really, diving isn't changing the world. We're not solving world hunger. We're going diving because it's what we enjoy. And I think people take themselves way too seriously at times. And I think it's okay to have a good time and do it safely as well. There's me spreading it far and wide.
That is a great note to close on. So, Christine, thank you so much for giving me your time and sharing with all of us. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope we meet and dive sometime. Abaco is near the top of my list, if not at the top. So let's stay in touch. And whether it's Mexico, Florida, Abaco, or somewhere else in the world, I really hope we do catch up sometime. And again, thank you for sharing with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got as much from it as I did. It was an absolute pleasure to meet and talk with Christine and to learn a bit more about her diving and her philosophy in terms of approaching her skill improvement and training. It was a real breath of fresh air to hear her say things like she's going to wait and build experience before she goes on to the next level. I absolutely love that and do think it's the right way to go. Thanks again to Christine for joining me and giving up her time. And thanks so much to XDEEP and the patrons of Speaking Sidemount for supporting this show. It makes everything you've just listened to possible. If you'd like to become a patron of Speaking Sidemount, then check us out at www.patreon.com/speakingsidemount, where you can find out all of the things you can get by becoming a patron and supporting this show. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star review. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, then let us know via our Facebook page listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.